All right, everybody. Good afternoon. Time for Walk and Talk with Pastor Paul. Glad you're with me. I'm Paul, the unconventional pastor, which which is a name that really bugs some of my Christian friends. But come join me. We're going to talk today about something I call the agenda of Christian love. And geez, I'm not sure if my hair's just kind of all over the place, and I hate seeing myself when I talk sometimes. Hi, Douglas from South Dakota, Hani from Idaho, and Gee Guy from way up north. Let me know where you're joining from. Also, we'll do a little Q&A today. TikTok is joining us now as well. So we're on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok now. So let me know where you're joining from. I'm trying a little bit different setup here. Thanks, Don. You want to put some earrings on too? Cool. So glad you're joining me today. We're going to talk today about the agenda of Christian love and why does it need to be that way? I've thrown the question out on the community chat on my website at pastor-paul.com. Hi, Charles from Chula Vista, Steve from Manchester, England, Lorraine from Australia. We are international today, and Peggy from Michigan, all on YouTube and Facebook. And love to know where you're joining from on TikTok as well. When I look at TikTok, I'm going to have to look way down here because of the setup I have going here. Maybe I can change this. Let me try something real fast here. Although this won't be very entertaining video for you all. Sherry from Santa Cruz. All right. Demonic Santa Cruz, right? We have a howdy from Texas. Very nice. Well, that'll help a little bit. Let's see if I do it this. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust TikTok. There we go, TikTok people. Hopefully that helps. And I'm trying not to have to look too far down from my camera on Facebook and YouTube whenever I'm reading comments from TikTok. So glad you guys are here. Appreciate you joining. And yeah, let me know where you're joining from. So my topic today is my Inspire You topic, and I'll do some Q&A as well today, which is what I normally like to do on Monday. But I just had an interesting experience. Hi, Carrie from the Land of Oz. I was invited out to lunch by a Christian friend, and I thought, great, I'm looking forward to this, a reconnection with somebody I hadn't connected to for a while. And I've lost a lot of relationship with Christians. Thanks, Hani, for the kind word. And I was looking forward and saying, wow, this is going to be nice to rekindle a connection with somebody that I've known sort of from my Christian past. And then as we get to the lunch, I realize, oh, this is not a connection get together. This is a get me saved get together. Get me repenting and resaved. Is that the appropriate term? Get me, oh, I don't know. Get me saved is what there is to it. Like I suddenly realized that, oh, I'm a project to this person. I'm a prospect. I am somebody that this person wants to get a notch on the belt or another sale and sell in the sales column. Intervention. Somebody says their rededication. Yeah, on TikTok. Isn't it true? By the way, if you're on TikTok, you can send likes, you can follow, share this with others. Notch in the belt, says Douglas. Carrie says, I read your other post. My heart sank for you. Yeah, it was, and somebody asked me how it felt, and I'm like, it was I felt slimed. Hi, Sarah from St. Louis on TikTok. I felt slimed. I felt, yeah, I just felt slimed. Reborn, says Patrick. Um, and the thing is, like what I want to tell Christians is I'm sure this person didn't mean to be manipulative and dishonest and sort of conniving to get me to lunch. Maybe they really did want to reconnect, but at very least they should have listened more and been less about trying to get the conversion. And but even if they had tried and done it better, I still would have ultimately come away feeling like there was an agenda. There was an agenda to that lunch. It wasn't Christian love, although I guess it was Christian love, we use in quotes. It was going for the clothes. And what happened to once save, always save, says Hannah. Didn't you, honey, didn't you say the prayer? Yeah, I did. I have said the magic prayer. So that's right. Once saved, always saved means that I'm saved, right? Oh, I got on TikTok the I'm praying for you, brother. I'm praying for you. Yeah. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts? And like I said, I don't think this person was trying to be manipulative, but they were. If you have an agenda attached to love, you know, what is it? First Corinthians 13 is the love chapter. You know, it's love is patient, love is kind. Love doesn't keep a record of wrongs. Love doesn't have an agenda. Richard on TikTok says Jesus never said once saved, always saved. That's man made lies. I think the whole idea of Christian salvation is a man made lie. Like, say the magic prayer, get to go to heaven is a made up, man made principle. But I just want to tell you, Christians, like it doesn't help. And when people see an agenda attached to your emotions, hi Linda on Facebook, they run. There's not going to be a second get together because you're like, no, I don't want to be a project. I don't want to be a potential client. And so I think what happens is, and here's part of the problem is that Christianity in America is very much a shame-based religion. You you are bad. You're an original sinner. You're a depraved piece of flesh. Um, and and so you're coming from a place of shame in the religious sect to begin with. And so then it's very easy from there to use a passage in Luke 9 and Mark 8 to start to say, well, if you aren't trying to win your friends to salvation, then you're not really living for Jesus. And so I heard this growing up, that this idea of, and it's Luke 9:26. It's also in Mark chapter 8. For whoever is ashamed of me and of my words, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed when he comes in his glory and the glory of Father and the holy angels. And so what this was taught to me as in growing up in Christianity is, if you're not out there trying to win your friends for Christ, to proselytize them to your religious sect, to convert them to Christianity, then you must be ashamed of Jesus. And one day Jesus is going to be ashamed of you before the Father. Yeah, as Hani says on YouTube, you better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout. I'm telling you why Santa God is coming to town. So if you're not out there proselytizing people to Christianity, you're ashamed of Jesus, and Jesus isn't going to stand before an angry God and stop him from throwing lightning bolts at you from heaven. But let me give you an idea of how this is just an ongoing misuse of the Bible from Christianity. That that they simply in American Christianity do not read the Bible for what it is, but it's always read from the agenda of Christianity. And so let me show you how we need to learn to read the Bible, to understand the context of culture and to understand the context of the writings themselves. And so we can grab a Bible verse. If you're ashamed of me, I'll be ashamed of you in front of the Father. And we can use that verse to destroy people's lives, to put shame on them and make Christianity an even more shame-based religious sect. But if you start to say, well, why was Jesus saying that to the people that he was talking to in the first century? And rather than try to port the two-dimensional words on the page to condemn and put shame on somebody, can we see what Jesus meant to say to those in the first century and port the intent to today for application rather than just two-dimensional words on a page? And so you have to start to look at the context. And so let's just one easy way is like, okay, this is in Luke chapter 9. What is the chapter about? And so it starts with Jesus sending out the disciples to preach the gospel. And it says they departed and went through the villages preaching the gospel and healing everywhere. So the gospel was that the kingdom of heaven has come to earth and therefore you can be healed of your sickness. And it's this amazing moment in earth history. It wasn't like go out and convert to our religion or you're going to hell. It was, we're going to come and help you and heal you and bring the amazing things. And then Jesus feeds the 5,000 where he's teaching. So we see a miracle and Jesus saying, no, we're a people of provision, not a people of taking and shame. And Peter then makes his confession of calling Jesus the Christ. But here's the real key. Then we have this idea of take up your cross and follow Jesus. That being a follower of Jesus is a sacrificial heart. It's a submission to the needs of others. It's a love your neighbor as yourself proposition, not a I get to be self-righteous and self-proclaimed going to heaven because I said a magic prayer. And he's saying, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses or forfeits himself? And then this passage of whoever is ashamed, and it's really important to read this because how I was told is like, if I'm not proselytizing people to Jesus, then I'm ashamed of Jesus, and Jesus is going to be ashamed of me in heaven before God. But what the verse actually says is, whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed when he comes in his glory, and when the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So that means something very different, ashamed of me and of my words. When Jesus said, no one comes to the Father but through me, he's saying a follower of me is somebody who follows my words, my teachings. And so being a follower of Jesus wasn't a matter of saying a magic prayer and going to a church building on a Sunday morning and saying, I belong to the right religious sect. It was to have a life that looked like Jesus. So being ashamed of Jesus in the context of this passage meant to not take up your cross and live like Christ. Therefore, a right wing Christianity that says, I've said the magic prayer, so I'm in, and now my job is to vote right wing and to be an anti abortion extremist and to hate, people of color coming across the border. That is to be ashamed of Jesus. That is not living a life that's taking up your cross. Not going to lunch with somebody and just loving them out of connection without an agenda to close the deal. Does that make sense? This that passage, and this happens so often in American Christianity. We take a Bible verse out of its context and we bring it as a two-dimensional thing and said, Jesus said he's going to be ashamed of you in heaven if you're not out there proselytizing to him. And that's not what Jesus was saying to people of the first century. And it's not what he's saying to people today. It isn't that Jesus is going to be ashamed of you if you're not out there proselytizing to your religious sect. It's that Jesus is saying there's a problem in our relationship if your life doesn't look like me. So, what did Jesus' life look like? He was an anti abortion extremist. He was anti gay. No, no. Jesus never said a single negative word about queerness. He never once even hinted at saying anything about God's most important thing being banning abortion. But he often talked about caring for the poor, caring for your enemy. As much as I can find, the Bible has almost 2,000 verses that demand seeking justice for the. It doesn't just say taking care of the poor. So, like, I have somebody, I write a check for $500 each month. One of my Facebook trolls was saying the other day. And I said, writing a check to Franklin Graham's Samaritan Purse, ugh, by the way, colonizers out there trying to make people around the world into American Christians. Writing a check to Franklin Graham's Samaritan's Purse is not seeking justice for the poor, the foreigner, the marginalized, and the economically disadvantaged. That's checking a box on a task list. Seeking justice means finding ways to say, how do I learn and educate myself about the systemic problems of my culture, of those who don't have the same advantage to economic opportunity that I do, those that have been marginalized by practices such as redlining and things in our culture. I did a video today. It's interesting. There's a story that the lawyers of Ron DeTrumpis, I'm sorry, Ron DeSantis. I get the Ron DeTrumpis. Is it DeTrumpis or DeSantis? I get those confused. He's such a Trumpite. I get confused. But his attorneys were ordered to define what being woke meant in court by the judge. And they said being woke, I don't have the quote in front of me, but basically being woke was to acknowledge that there was systematic racism in the history of America. And so I made a post today like, oh, so the opposite of being woke is being asleep or being easily offended or being unwilling or incapable of dealing with hard issues. Don't let anybody put you down for being woke. It's much worse to be asleep and blindly indoctrinated. And being blindly indoctrinated makes it easy for somebody to say, well, here, right here in Luke 9:26, it says, if you're ashamed of Jesus, he'll be ashamed of you in heaven. And so you better get out there and start proselytizing. You better be winning souls. When was the last time you won a soul to heaven? Christianity has become a soul sucking shaming religious sect. And I just want to give you permission to say, I don't deserve that shame. What are your thoughts? I want to hear your thoughts and share what you guys are saying. And if you have any questions for our Q&A time, would love to hear that. Let me first tell you about Deconstruction U, which is my new mentorship program. If you are a person who's left behind their church, but not faith and spirituality, and the struggles that come along with that are, is God mad at me for rethinking my faith? Is the Bible inerrant, or do I either have to believe dissonantly believe none of the contradictions, or throw the whole thing out, or is there a space in between to be inspired by the Bible? Is there a hell? Am I sending my children to hell by rethinking my faith? All of those things. If you're struggling with any of those things as you're deconstructing your faith, don't walk that journey alone. For those of you on TikTok, you can go into my link tree and find your way to my website, pastor-paul.com, and click on that deconstruction and reconstruction link. And if you're questioning your religious teaching about who God is or what the Bible really says, come join me for Decon U. I have an exclusive online study guide curriculum for you. And then we have one-on-one Zoom mentorship meetings, and you get free access to my audiobook, to the audiobook version of my novel, Joseph Comes to Town, When the Religious Right Becomes Religiously Wrong. And all of that is available through Deconstruction U. I wish I could do it for free, but I do have to put a price on it so I can make a living and eat. But if the price is prohibitive for you, then reach out to me and let's see if we can find a way to make it work for you. Deconstruction U. Find out more about it at my website, pastor-paul.com. All right. Hani says on YouTube, says, Paul, I love how you bring life back into the Bible. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, it just is a matter of sitting down and really, really wanting to know the context of what Jesus was saying, rather than taking the two-dimensional words on the page and, saying, this is it. Also, this is one of the things I need to get better at this. I think I do have a prophetic voice in the season. It's part of why I hate the title of pastor. I use the title of pastor because it's the only title that we really recognize as authority in the Christian church, because American Christianity has elevated the idea of pastor because we've become a bunch of sheep and consumers in the church that want to have a shepherd who will take care of our needs, rather than a prophetic or apostolic voice who challenges us to something greater. So I use pastor because it's a recognized term in our culture, but I also think I am bringing a prophetic spirit to breathe life into Scripture. So thank you for that. Hi, Paul. Can you recommend some progressive leftist Christian books? Well, what do you want? What do you want to know about in progressive Christian? What? Tell me a topic, and I can kind of point you maybe in a direction to a book. For people who are deconstructing, my favorite book, people who have just left their church, is Searching for Sunday by Rachel Held Evans. I think it's one of the best books for a deconstructing Christian that you can have. It's really a fantastic book. Sadly, she passed away a few years ago, and that's a big loss for us all because she was brilliant and amazing. The table on TikTok says, my spouse is stepping away from Christianity to embrace Norse paganism, and I'm not sure how to feel. The question I always ask is your spiritual belief drawing you to the goodness of heaven and the better version of yourself? Are you being sozoed through your faith, or are you being drawn to something that draws you away from connection to a divine goodness, and work from there? And then just start to compare notes on what you believe. Trust your discernment and go there, particularly on leftist progressive interpretations of the Bible. So I try to avoid the terminology of leftist and progressive I would say anything by Brian McLaren is something I would recommend. Let's see, what's my Brian McLaren book? A Generous Orthodoxy is a great one. I just think Brian McLaren is fantastic. My book, oh, where's my copy of oh, it's under my book, Joseph Comes to Town When the Religious Right Becomes Religiously Wrong, is a novel that is my envisioning of what Jesus would say to evangelical Christians in America today, were he incarnate here. So that's called Joseph Comes to Town. You can see that in my TikTok bio. If you really want to get challenged, I would say like a Rob Bell Love Wins book. It's going to blow you out of the water, and you're really going to have to think about it. And yeah, so Douglas says, did you see the interview with the father of the Club Q shooter? If not, should definitely. Yeah, I did see it. And can I summarize it? And this may not be 100% fair summary, but my summary of it is, sure, my son may be a mass shooter of gay people in a queer club, but at least he's not gay. That was what his father said. And then you wonder how shame may have driven this young man to shame and belief that queer people aren't as human. Christianity teaches that we love queer people, but they're not as human as we are. And so therefore, of course, why wouldn't a depressed, messed up young man who's been taught all his life better to be a mass shooter than gay would go shoot up a club? It's awful. It's awful. Peg on Facebook says, my uncle died while I was contemplating how to approach him about salvation. Until I started following you, I felt responsible for his place in hell. Thank you for freeing me. Oh my gosh. I'm so happy, Peg. Christianity is so shaming. There's so much shame brought by Christianity. Do not let Christians put shame up on you. They just are carrying their own shame from very bad teaching about human depravity and original sin. And so they have a need to put that shame onto others, and don't let it happen to you. Stephen says, I think there's also a problem with thinking that we can know the whole context of Bible writings. We're never going to know it all because it's 2,000 years ago. Yes, Stephen, and I think our job is to wrestle with it together. I do think there's something mystical and inspiring about the Bible, but we have to wrestle with it, with heaven and with men, for sure. Don says, please explain what they meant by once saved, always saved, and why that is so controversial. Can you really lose your salvation? It's always such a hot spot. Don, I think it actually comes from I think both are wrong. You know, you can lose your salvation versus once saved, always saved is all based upon the idea that life is a binary choice of, am I going to say the magic prayer and go to heaven? And if I say that magic prayer, am I then going to heaven no matter what I do? I can kill as many people as I want. I can do whatever, and I'm still going to heaven. Or, you know, do I have to continually re-say the magic prayer to go? And I think the answer is none of the above. Jesus continually said the kingdom of heaven is inherited by those who follow his words. His words, love neighbor as yourself. His mission statement was he's come to set the captives free, to give seeing eyes to the blind. There's verses that say, you're going to be told, depart from me, I never knew you, if you're not visiting the prisoner in prison, if you're not clothing the naked. I mean, it's such an interesting binary idea of like, you're going to get to the pearly gates and Peter is going to be there and he's going to say, did you say the magic prayer, yes or no? And he's not going to care anything about your heart condition, what you did with other people. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I think ultimately, the kingdom of heaven that Jesus was talking about, and I think if you look at first century context and what the teachings and belief were, that Jesus was talking about something happening here on earth in this age, not something in the future. That you have a binary yes, no. Did you say the magic prayer, yes or no? Christianity is so much more than that. So I think both are wrong. Is it once saved, always saved, or is it you have to be resaved, converted again? recommit your life to God, all those things. When Jesus was saying, no one comes to the Father but through me, he was saying, you're my followers. You take up your cross. Your life looks like me. So a Christian who goes to church on Sunday, who said the magic prayer, and their life doesn't look like Jesus, I think when they go out into the next life, they're going to hear, depart from me, I never knew you. Now, since I don't believe in there is an eternal hellfire that they're going to go to, it is then they're going to have to reckon with their deeds and wrestle with the spirit of heaven with, here's what I did when I was on earth. I just said a magic prayer and I thought that was enough, but I actually didn't care for the poor, the foreigner, the marginalized, and the economically disadvantaged, which is so funny because people are always saying to me, well, the Bible is clear. The Bible is clear. God hates homosexuals. The Bible is clear. And there's only one thing that the Bible is clear on, and that is that God wants that the commands of the Bible are to seek justice for the poor, the foreigner, the marginalized, and the economically disadvantaged. Those are the only things the Bible is clear on. We can argue on everything else, but 2,000 commands to seek justice for the poor. And again, that doesn't mean writing a check and having a backpack drive and serving food on Thanksgiving. That means seeking justice. That means, how do we make our society not have poverty? How do we make our society not have inequality of economic opportunity? In my city of Fresno, there is an historically African-American community in the southwest part of our town. And if a child is born in that zip code, their life expectancy is 20 years less than the life expectancy of my children born in my zip code here. That's something that if I'm truly a follower of Christ, I say, oh my gosh, that is not okay. I am commanded to seek the welfare of my city, for in the welfare of my city will I have my welfare. It says in Jeremiah 29:7. So if I'm like, I just said a magic prayer and I get to go to heaven, and yeah, I'm going to write a check to Samaritan's Purse every once in a while, and that makes me good with God, you are not reading the Bible and you're not understanding what it means to be a follower of Christ. And okay, Skull Patrol, I need some context here. You're saying sounds like they need better parents. If you're saying a child's life expectancy is 20 years shorter because those people just aren't as good at being parents as my people are, fuck off. That's my word for you. You better give me some more clarity of that statement, or I'm just going to say fuck you for that. There is nothing Christ-like in that statement whatsoever. And it is the deeply ingrained racism of evangelicalism that has been that the Donald Trump era has unearthed. I always suspected, I remember in the Obama era, I'm like, boy, we sound kind of racist. But I'm like, nah, we're too good for that. And then Trump came along. I'm like, oh my God, we are fully racist. It is woven into the root system of white Euro Western Christianity, and it's being revealed. And anybody who could say, well, if that part of town has a 20-year shorter life expectancy for their children than in the more affluent white neighborhoods, they should be better parents, then you've become very sickened by your religion. You're very hard-hearted. And I, in the most harsh of terms, as Jesus said to James and John, who cursed a village and said, let us call fire down from heaven on that village, Jesus, because they're not as good as we are at embracing you. And he said, stop it. The Bible says he rebuked them, and the terminology is he rebuked them in the harshest of terms. And then there's a disputed passage that we don't have in every translation and wasn't in the oldest manuscripts we have, but I still love the tenor of it. He said, you don't know the spirit you're of. Skull Patrol, you simply don't know the spirit you're partnered with when you make a statement like that. But it's not heaven, I can tell you that. It's a sickness of your heart that's brought on by the shame-filled self-supremacy of right-wing Christianity, and it's a horrible, disgusting statement that you should be massively embarrassed to have made. Douglas on YouTube says, "We're conservative Mormon and we don't do gay." Well, I'll tell you what, the Mormon Church came out and backed the new law to support marriage for interracial and same gender marriage. So thank you heaven for the Mormon Church, because I don't see evangelicals doing that. I don't see evangelicals cursing themselves for being anti-gay and anti-gay marriage all this year. So yeah, even Mormonism is still very problematic in its interaction with homosexuality, no question about it. But at least this is a huge jump forward in their support of that law. Hi, Jamie. How are you? You said, but you are Protestant. The Roman Church is the legit Western Church. No, it's not. The following of Jesus is the legit Western Church. Roman Catholic, Protestant, non-denominational, they're all just sects of a religion that's man-made. Honey says, "What about the fall? I've never been comfortable with the teachings." Yeah, I think it's again, I think those are man-made um, uh, man-made concepts of the fall. And even if there was a fall, then what Romans tells us is that Adam's act, which by the way, Adam was an allegorical figure, not a real one, but Adam's act was wiped out by Jesus' act. And to believe that you have to participate in that Jesus act by saying a magic prayer is to say Jesus' act is not as powerful as Adam's act, because the Christian belief is Adam's act impacts everybody on earth with nobody having any choice in the matter. But if you say Jesus' act requires an act from the human being in partnership with it, then what you're saying is Adam's act is greater than Jesus' act, and it's heresy. Peg says zip code means where houses is being built, where housing is being built, where stores, hospitals, police, and other services are located. That's why where you live matters. Oh, that's well said, Peg. Thank you. It's not what the racist statement of Skull Patrol of they need to have better parents because those people aren't as good at parenting as my people are. It is they don't have the infrastructure and services to help their folks survive. It is that their fathers are massively more likely to be incarcerated because our legal system is racist in how it mets out punishment. So it's much more likely a black man being arrested is going to go to prison than a white man being arrested. We incarcerate in America a higher percentage of our population than any other country on earth, even communist Cuba. We have a higher percentage of our people incarcerated than even communist Cuba does. And I believe, and I may not have the stats in front of me now, but while African Americans, I think, make up 13% of the American population, and I'm sorry if I have these stats wrong, 13% of the total population of America is Black, and it's something like 40% of our prison population. And that it may be, I think I've got this right. I should look it up, but I'm not going to be able to. You can look it up. But I think it's something like 40% of our prison population are Black men, and I think over half are people of color. So it's much disproportionate. And like you say, less police, the police being more antagonistic than helpful, hospital availability, other services, that's what causes the disparity in life expectancy. One says access to good healthcare is a major issue in those areas as well. Yep. We found out in our city that the major healthcare system, which has a downtown hospital and a far-flung white flight hospital, was taking government money meant for the care of the indigent and poor, and we're using it to build a huge, sprawling, beautiful new campus in the white flight hospital. That's what happens in these situations. Jamie, I see you're having a lively conversation. We were talking about the Christian agenda. Me going out to lunch the other day with somebody who I thought wanted to connect in friendship, but instead they had invited me out to get me saved. And why do Christians feel they need to always have that agenda to close the deal? They either have the agenda to close the deal or they have an agenda to just condemn because you're saying something different. I'm going to start doing a series of videos on the idea of being an unconventional pastor. And, Jesus was hated by religious people who loved the status quo and power they felt of their religion. Because he spoke against their self-righteousness and self-justification. And my dog just joined the live. Somebody's walking by and I got a cool dog. He's all right. And so when people tell me I'm a false teacher, false prophet, all those things, it's just such a compliment because I think it's in Luke 8, and I may have the reference wrong. I love the religious guys of Jesus' day saying, "So you're a Samaritan and you have a demon." They hated that Jesus hung out with the sinners and not with them. And they hated that he wasn't bringing the sinners into the temple to join their religious sect, but instead he just hung out with them. And so they called Jesus demonic and a Samaritan. They called him a drunkard and a winebibber. And so, yeah, when Christians call me those names, it's just such a compliment because Jesus said, "Hey, those people hated me. They're going to hate you too." They hated Jesus even unto putting him on the cross. And if you read my book, Joseph Comes to Town, you'll see my belief that evangelicals were Jesus incarnate on earth today. They would want him dead again. Thank you, Todd S. I appreciate that comment. Wow, don't equate yourself as Jesus, says Neuron Mesh. Well, Jesus said that we should bear his name, which meant we live like him, and that we would do greater things than him. So I love, one of my favorite statements I ever heard was, knowing who you are looks like arrogance to people who don't know who they are. And so, yeah, well said, Jamie. She says, doesn't Christian mean Christ-like? So I love it. I mean, Christians, so you think you're like Jesus? Because they don't understand who Jesus was, what he said, and what he taught. And they can't even see the two-dimensional verse of, you'll do what I do and you'll do greater things. Jesus said, all authority on heaven and earth has been given to me. Now I give it to you. Because Christianity makes sad, self-absorbed little people full of shame who only know one way to make themselves feel better in their shame, and that's by saying, I'm better than that person. And that's exactly what you're taught in Christianity. So, you can't have a legitimate discussion about anything. You can't wrestle with concepts. You got to do things like Skull Patrol and say, "I know you are, but what am I?" Kind of thing. Like, you too. Those arguments that I get from Christians, and then when they're completely out of content, and I give them something else, then it's like, "You're a false teacher." And so I take those as a great compliment and a great honor. All right, guys, I'm going to have to run. Don't forget, go to my website, pastor-paul.com, and you can find out more about Deconstruction U. And for those who've left behind their church but not their faith and spirituality. And if you would you consider subscribing to my page? It'll give you access to my community chat board and a bunch of other cool stuff. And it will help me do free content like this today and continue to do it. Would you be so kind as at least go to the website? For those of you on YouTube and Facebook, you can just point your camera right at the QR code and it'll point it and take you to the right direction to the website. And you can subscribe for as little as $5.99 a month, get all kinds of cool stuff, up to $100 a month, and help me to keep my work going, be able to do the free things I do here. Jamie, I just saw your text. Hang on one second, guys, before I get off. Did you say Smoke My Petty lost a husband? Is Smoke My Petty still on TikTok? Because if so, I want to give my heart to you today. Jamie, do you know if she's still on? Gosh, I don't know if I have contact information for Smoke My Petty. Well, Smoke, if you get this, reach out. I'm so sorry to hear that. Thank you for letting me know, Jamie. That just breaks my heart. Thank you, Patrick, for that kind word. Gosh, I wish I knew how to get a hold of her. All right, guys. My apologies for the trolls, but I'm glad they're here because it helps the algorithm grow, and TikTok and YouTube and Facebook to get the videos out there. Douglas, I see that message about the newsletter. Let me take a look at your account on the website and we'll see if we can get you hooked up. Smithy Pie says, thank you for your patience, Paul. You're welcome. Patrick, I see that comment. Beautiful and honest. Thank you. Peg, good to see you today. Honey says, I can't get logged on to your website. Okay, guys, if you're having problem with the website, shoot me an email or a message through one of the social media, pastor-paul.com. Even if you can't sign on, you should be able to click on that contact link at the bottom, and we'll work it through and we'll figure it out. Skull Patrol says, you told me to fuck off and called me a racist when I didn't even know what race the housing was. So when I said traditionally Black community, you didn't know what race that was? Right. Right. The dissonance and the ability to self-justify of being a part of a shaming religious sect is pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. And absolutely I did. I said, we have a historically African-American community in Southwest Fresno. It's exactly what I said. So justify yourself all you like, but you made a massively racist comment. And never once have I seen you say, oh, I didn't mean that. What you said was, they need to be better parents. Even if it was white people, You still think it's a worthwhile comment to say they need better parents? That is a sick, disgusting, horrific comment. You need to check your heart, Skull Patrol. All right. And I don't have time to fix you today. So, in fact, that's not even my job. My job is to spread truth, and you get to do with it what you will. All right, guys. Love you all. Again, pastor-paul.com. Check it out. So glad you're here with me today. We'll see you.